Morning, everyone. What a great kickoff to the conference earlier. It's amazing the energy that can come out of those things and the direction our days can go in when we start off that way. So I just want to give a big shout out for the acknowledgement and the storytelling that took place there. I know that a lot of us kind of have our heads down and have been in crisis management the last 3 years. So I do just want to acknowledge mental health is a big thing. So if you need to turn your camera off, if you need to step away, no dramas, no stress. It's a big thing that we're all dealing with now, and appreciate that you all have given your time to me to kind of talk story and chat about policy, both at the local, state, and federal level. I will tell you and share with you, I do not know everything. I know very, very little, but that's the great thing about being able to connect with you all, is that we can continue to bounce ideas, grow our network, and see how we can continue to help each other out. So my name is Nick Winfrey. My pronouns are he and him. I'm the president and chief professional officer at Maui United Way. I'm also the head of the state of Hawaii for United Way Worldwide, and represent the state back to our broader network. And then I'm also on the policy group, about 5 different individuals for the nation with United Way Worldwide as well. A little bit of a history on myself. I am fairly new to the community. I've been on Maui for about 3.5 years now, been in my role for a little over 3 years. Prior to this, I ran the philanthropy program for Australian Red Cross in the Pacific Islands. And then prior to that, I was on the mainland with the Humane Society for about 10 years. Underneath all of this, I used to be a Marine, short haircut, no beard, all of those things, but I found my calling in the nonprofit sector, and really just appreciate being on the call with you all, knowing the passion and empathy that you guys have to close equity gaps and provide that hand up. So hopefully what we can do today is have some interactions. That's what I look for in these types of conversations, feedback of how we can direct the conversation to best benefit everyone, but also to learn and learn from you all as well. So I've got a really basic presentation I'll share. We'll walk through kind of the local, state, and Fed snapshot at a 30,000 foot view, and then kind of move forward about how we approach depending on what our end target or end goal is. I will say that in my profession, my goal is to put myself out of business to where there's no need for a nonprofit sector. And we're really pushing for systems change rather than Band-Aid fixes. And I wouldn't do what I do if I didn't think that that was possible. So hopefully we can change the world together and make sure that every equity gap is a thing of the past. So I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me. And if you do see like 8 bazillion tabs open, just that's how my mind works. So please bear with me on that. So this is just a quick little snapshot. We go every year for Hill Day is what we call it. We're a broader network of about 1,100 United Ways. So we have that, really group power in the space. But as a representative for the state of Hawaii, I'm able to meet with all of our reps rather than just the reps within Maui County. I was fortunate enough to actually go into an appropriations meeting this past year with Congressman Case and really direct and find feedback of where their mind's at. So quick poll. This is just a couple of quick questions we wanted to ask, and thank you, Jayden, for pitching that up. It's how many of you all are comfortable or familiar with policy work, either at the local, state, and federal level? I'm just trying to gauge what the vibe of the room is. So we'll give you guys a couple of minutes. All right, it's a pretty broad spectrum, which is pretty interesting. So it's great that you all have actually some experience. So this is where I hope to learn from you all, where I say that I don't have all of the experience needed to do what I need to get done would be an understatement. So we can close that poll. And we've got one more poll that looking to check. So it looks like local, oh, sorry, no worries. So next poll is just how much of your organization's funding comes from government contracts or grants. And the reason why we're asking this question is I see policy making and conversations with our representatives as two different pathways. I need to take a snapshot of that. So it's interesting. So us at Maui United Way, we actually receive zero government dollars. We do some fiscal sponsorships with some local programs. However, I think this year will be the first year that we're actually getting state funding to the grants and administration. So more than 50%. That speaks volumes about not only the reliance on policy and relationships with the government. That could be a good or a bad thing. It could be opportunities to grow. So really appreciate you guys sharing that information with me. And nobody is at 0%, which kind of blows me away. So we can end that poll. And I will jump on to my next slide. So the polls kind of gave me a little bit of a direction, but if you guys can put in the chat box what you're looking to get out of this, it'll help us as well. Because once again, when I see policy making, there's different approaches that we can look at. Because policy making can be, am I trying to secure funds for programming? Because that's actually policy making and working within the space. Am I advocating for my clients? Or am I actually looking to close equity gaps long-term as systems change focus? I know those are kind of ethereal, but really you're either letter writing and pushing forward that approach, you're having focus groups to create a push nationally or locally, or you're looking at building relationships with individual stakeholders within the representative space on how they best can support the community. So I will close that poll. So looking at the county and state, and once again, I really do welcome any chats and feedbacks. It looks like we've got some comments in there, and we can share those poll results. I'm sure Jayden will pitch those out there. Deborah, great. Adele, update systems to close equity gaps. Catherine, closing equity gaps through systems change. That is my motivation as well. So some of the things that we look at within policymaking at the county and state is really basic. And when I say basic, it's not basic, but it's some pretty straightforward approaches that we can take. The first is know who your representatives are. Is it your full council? Is it an individual council member? Who is your mayor? Who is your state senator? Who is your state representative? Figure that out. And there's heaps of websites. You just can Google, what is my district number? Who is representative? And do some Googling. It's a really straightforward thing because the older I get, the more I realize that everybody is just people. We're all doing the same thing. We're trying to make an impact as best as we can. But knowing who you're dealing with and what their platform is can give you a strategic approach on how you want to build out that relationship. So for example, within the county of Maui, we have a very progressive council right now. I know that, Gabe Johnson on Lanai has a big approach in housing and agriculture. So knowing those conversations can shape how I approach them when I'm going for an ask. And is my ask to say, hey, I need funding for, this data project that we're mapping out food security, or is it, am I trying to provide funds for foster care and ALICE populations? Two completely different approaches depending on who my representative is. Same if you're going at the state level, Senator DeCoy, from Molokai, has representatives, is in the farming community, understands that, okay, if I have these conversations that I'm looking for, even if I'm writing a grant in that space for like a grants and administration, is how do I tweak that just a little bit to correlate with that? Find their numbers, find their emails, get a meeting set up, tell them what you know. That's one of the biggest factors that I found here locally, especially during the pandemic, that was valuable for our representatives. have a conversation and tell them what the pulse is. Tell them what's going on, what you're seeing in front of you, because that shapes their direction. Are we seeing children going hungry? Are we seeing a higher rate of abuse and calls within this sector? They need to know that. And how are they going to know that unless you tell them? We just assume everything. And I do the same thing, even with our staff and our board. You've got to communicate these things back to these individuals. If you are meeting with these individuals and you get a meeting set up, know what you want to ask for. Find out, hey, do I want them to advocate for, higher lunch rates for the Department of Education? Do I want them to, provide more funding on addiction counseling? Know what you want to go into these things prior to going in. Yes, you've got to tell your story, but what is that end goal? Yes, I want to close equity gaps. Okay, well, where am I at that step beforehand? Is it education? Is it implementation? Is it policy making? Is it what are you pushing for? So ask these questions before going in there. Big thing to know is when does the legislative sessions occur as well. To correlate with that, the other thing is know when the elections are. It's always a touchy thing, but we hedge in our space. No matter who's in office, no matter who could be in office, everyone is equal. But know when that election occurs as well, because a lot of times what I've learned, and I'm really transparent about this, and I hate it to say it, but what are the feathers and caps that politicians can use locally? What can they tell their constituencies that will make them look good, especially coming around election time? It's the feathers in the cap make a big difference. Know that this process will never end when it comes to county and local funding. I wish that it would. I wish that it could, but you're always going to be having to maintain those relationships and always build those individuals up. What I'm talking about now is the individual relationships on how we can kind of communicate to our representatives. I will talk a little bit later about how we come together as groups, almost like this partnership as well. The Working Family Coalition, ag groups, all of these groups, coming together with a singular message actually has a lot more power. That's where we have huge benefit, is this broader United Way network. Is we've got 1,100 United Ways that are embedded in the community. When we come together with a shared approach, we're going to get a lot more done than doing it individually. However, those relationships are key. One thing I did put on here is try not to take sides. We all have our own personal opinions and beliefs and political standings and foundations and experiences that we stand upon. We're going to like some reps better than others. We're going to dislike some reps, but we have to work with everyone. So you really have to do your best to leave those biases, because that's what they are, on the back burner, because in our industry, our representatives are our representatives, whether or not we voted for them or not. So it's important to remember that whether you're dealing locally, state, or federal, they are representing our community. Whether it's how you represent it or not, it doesn't matter. But that's where the Googling comes in. I will be aware, be honest about that. One thing I will share that is a tactic to kind of gain some relationship building if you're looking to come in and have zero relationships. So I had zero relationships coming into Maui and into the state of Hawaii. I have relationships in California and internationally and things like that, but not here locally. Have some awards. Provide some awards. It's pretty straightforward. See what some of your representatives are doing, and if they're doing some solid work in your field, acknowledge that. Let them know. They're gonna love that, appreciate that, and really, it's a great icebreaker when building out those relationships. So moving on to the federal, and if you guys have questions, please just ask. I talk a lot. I fill gaps, so awkward silences aren't my thing. But please just chime in, unmute. Feel free to talk, ask questions, or we can wait till the end as well. Moving on to federal, because I kind of quantify county and state pretty similar. Federal is a little bit different. Federal, as far as policy making goes, it's pools of people that you're looking at. Yes, it's great. One of the benefits that we have here in the state is we have equal representation in the Senate, with a smaller population. So you can actually build those relationships up pretty, not easily, but faster than a lot of other states in the mainland. When you're meeting with our Fed, make sure you know exactly what you're looking to do. First time I went out to DC, I'm just like, I just need to build a relationship. And I got asked, hey, what kind of funding do you need? And I'm like, oh, shoot, like, how did I not have this prepared? Like, it's one of these things. But just know what you're going into it, know what you need and what you want to come across. Having really good leave behinds, whether that's digital or hard copy, is key. So looking at the Fed and as far as policy making and pushes to have votes and bills acknowledged, come with your stuff together. Some of the things that we've worked on, for example, are the child tax credit, which I'm sure all of you all are aware of, big proponent of, and we see the value within that space. What we came to the table with was, we knew what we wanted to accomplish. We want to make this child tax credit permanent in the US. Well, how can we do that? We need a lot of votes, we need easy arguments, and we need our politicians to look good doing it. How can we make that as easy as possible and gift wrap that for them? So we had heaps of statistics on what that actually did for the state of Hawaii, how many jobs were created out of it, how much revenue was generated by it, how many children were able to attend preschool, because we know that's an issue here, and we made it easy for them. And mind you, our reps are a bubble compared to the rest of the country. A lot of times our reps align with what we're looking at. But because we were so prepared for that, now they come back to us and ask us questions on how we can support them in that space as well. So you find those 2 points that align with our reps that you're trying to do, and how do you continually feed that information back to those reps, so when the right time does come to vote, they're going to do it. Another example that is worked upon, and really it's this collaborative effort. Again, it's we're better together than going in individually. Is here in the state of Hawaii, the USDA allocates, I think it's like $4.55 a meal for the Department of Education for free to low moderate income households for their lunches. What we found was that even prior to inflation and supply chain issues, that cost was like $10 to $15, which just doesn't make sense. Alaska, their meals get 40% higher than what we get. It just shows you that we hadn't had a push or a voice to actually make that happen. So we compiled data. We knew what culturally appropriate food costs. We knew what distribution costs. We knew what preparing and having safe and healthy environments for these students to eat in. We had all that documentation, and Hawaii Appleseed put all of that together, and they submitted it to our reps. It's a combined effort, heaps of letter writing, all of those types of things. But when I met in person, we're going to drill it home again. We're going to provide more statistics. We're going to let them know that, hey, whatever you all need to get this forward, we will be here to support you. Our Fed reps have staff. This is what they do, same as county. They have legislative staffs. They're going to do research on what they need to do to get things moving forward. The goal for us is to be one of those resources to provide them that data as well, to support them and make them look good. So that, aligning with your policy goals and targets, that's the role that we try to play. Yes, we can come together and try to write bills and do all of those things. I've been part of that as well. It's exhausting, and we have other priorities that we've got to take care of. I mean, if you guys have policy staff members on your team, or you are policy individuals yourselves, amazing. I'm not. We don't. So we have to kind of fill in where we can and play the easiest role that we can do. I misspelled child on there, so please be mindful. My spelling's not great. With our Fed reps, one of the huge goals and targets and benefits and hindrances is we live so far away. It's not easy to get to Washington, D.C. It's a long trip, and it's an expensive trip. However, when you do visit in person, it goes so far. The relationships that we have now just from those in-person meetings with key staff have really played a role in how we can look at changing policy, providing more resources to our community, and opening up those doors to bring in more resources as well. One big thing to share, and and this is where I ask for your guys' feedback too. I can dive more into the policy group. I look at funding a lot. I look at how do we bring in funding into the county rather than just shuffling funding around, because as my role at Maui United Way, it's bringing in resources while also pushing policy change. But looking at funding, we don't get a lot of Fed funding in our state, especially here in the county. A lot goes to waste. So that's why my press is how do we bring more resources in to build capacity and then look at further equity systems change and policy push closures. So one thing to know is the Fed always likes to under promise and over deliver. And that's a statement I use a lot because it's something that I try to live by as well. But they're not going to promise funds to a program and then take them away because the budget doesn't allow it. It's going to make them look bad. It's going to hurt the systems. So typically what you see end up happening is they're going to, okay, we're going to fund these over here, but we're going to make sure we've got a nice little safety net of funds just in case this doesn't go through or this doesn't go through. But what ends up happening is there's funds available kind of end of year. Same as we all have in our budgets. Oh, shoot, I didn't allocate that GL code. We didn't spend all that money on that program. We've got to spend it now. So if you have these quote unquote shovel ready projects that are really ready to roll and need funding, having those available for feds makes their jobs easier. It's don't think of it as like, oh, I've got to go shake a hat and ask for funding. They've got to spend this money. And if you can make it easy for them, and once again, the reminder is, and if you can put a feather in their cap, they're more than likely than not going to try to fund those programs. So having those ready and letting the representatives, the appropriation staff know, easy enough. Relationships with Fed, go on their websites, invite them to your meetings, invite them to your galas, let them know what's going on with you. They can write letters of recommendation for funding. You can meet virtually. They have local staff within our community as well. Just get in front of these people. It's hugely valuable. Another funding aspect that is, it's actually called appropriations. It's not earmarks anymore. Our representatives kind of have the ability to dole out funds as they see fit without a huge federal oversight process. This, to me, I'm a little jaded in this space because it's really, this is the feather in the cap, is how can I go back and have a good campaign ad, if we think about it this way, on something that I'm funding. So when we approach earmarks, and it is a little bit of a work, I would recommend, and I can share, and I'll put my details, I will share every earmark and appropriations ask that we've ever put in, because it's a great template for you all to provide. Don't reinvent the wheel. But how we approach it's a little bit different than, hey, it's going to have this impact and this much, support and close this equity gap. It's a sales job on how they can sell it to their constituency. If we take that approach, it's a little bit different. But I look to us and other United Ways, we'll pitch it out there. I'll volunteer them as well, is we've got these resources and letters and contacts and leave behinds just for examples for you all to use. Because I think really not reinventing it's not a huge undertaking to do these things. You can just have it on autopilot. You can send a reminder. If you got your gala, you can invite them. If you're on Oahu, you can meet with their local staff. If you all of these things are really just, you can become part of your own routine if you don't have a full-time policy staff. So I talk really fast and I'm already at this conclusion because that's just how it goes. I apologize. But for us, the relationships are key in all policymaking initiatives. And by relationships, it's not just with your representatives, it's with your cohort within your community. Working with Karen Worthington and the group, it seems like 10 years ago, and it also seems like yesterday as we're developing, a 2-in-1 operator here, coming together with a group with shared interests and shared goals is going to really exponentially grow your impact and chances of shifting the dial. Form working groups. You're more than likely already part of them. But think about joining the ones that are already out there as well. Like I said, the Working Family Coalitions, great group. We've got Maui Nui Food Alliance here, great group. Different groups can come together, share goals, share targets, and really compound your efforts within policymaking, especially in the nonprofit sector. If Senator Scott says, oh my God, I've got 10 nonprofits coming from the entire state saying, A, that this is an issue, B, this is where the gaps are, and C, here's a solution, they're going to listen. They're going to listen. So it's always key. It's not always easy. It does take a little time in that space. But if you do see those invites for those working groups come around, jump on them. Broadband Hui, another example, not necessarily in the social sector, but it does affect the social sector. How do we get access for internet, to our keiki to continue learning and doing those things? The group that's in there, it's hundreds of millions of dollars now coming into the state, and it's a consolidated effort. Know who to connect with, once again, and I will share this, is it's 99% of the time not even going to be your rep. It's going to be a key staff member within their office that's going to be that gatekeeper and know when the need might arise or when the opportunity might arise, and they'll reach out to you. I mean, it's great if you don't always have to chase, but when they send you an email and ask for your input, that's the relationship goal, and that doesn't always happen with the representative. However, locally, yes, council 100%, but at the Fed level, know this as well. In our congressional district, we've switched. We went from Tulsi Gabbard to Congressman Kahele to, I won't say whomever, but we all can assume who will win the congressional district race here. They have staff that carry over. So the same staff that was with Congressman Gabbard is more than likely going to be with the new congressperson coming on board as well. So that makes the relationships a little bit easier and the gatekeepers a little bit easier to get into. Multiplied, I told you my spelling is not great. I apologize. But going back, it's when you come together and work together, it really does make a big difference. So I do see a hand raised. I would be happier not to answer any questions, Deborah.
Of course I have questions, Nick. It's nice. Thank you so much. That was great. Are there any specific initiatives happening for Maui County, like at the council, that folks could tap into or join? I don't know if Maui United Way is leading anything with your council or your mayor.
So it's interesting is right now, because of the election, we have not pumped the brakes so much, but we haven't really pressed hard on a lot of different things. Right now, we're in our big fundraising campaign, and the county is one of our big fundraisers. But I will share how we target that is, okay, well, let's bring on, this is the other trick too, is think about board development and how you can bring on specific board members that can help you segue these relationships as well. So Fed, I actually have a board member in the military that moved from Hawaii back to the East Coast, still on our board, has access to DC, can get in there. We have Sandy Boz on our board now, who's managing director. Great segue to get into the county. Great relationship with Tyson Miyake. So looking at initiatives, I'll give you an example that one is just wrapping right now. It's the Department of Agriculture here in the county. Us at Maui United Way look at food security as a central hub, that and housing, that if are fixed could really have a massive snowballing effort. So we spent the bandwidth to join the Maui Nui Food Alliance, the Ag Working Group, as well as a few others. So obviously Maui County voted to create a Department of Ag. What is the Department of Ag? Well, let's get engaged and be part of those conversations to help shape it so we can have a direction that an input that we can provide in the social sector about what food security can do for our community. So we help develop and provide feedback on that bill, and it just passed yesterday, so fantastic news. And we also have a new ag director that we've got a great relationship with as well. The other thing that we participate in is the CARPAC group. And if you guys aren't familiar with that, it's the Climate Action Resiliency Council. I can't remember the acronym, but it's developing the climate resiliency plan for the county of Maui. And that looks at construction, that looks at infrastructure, all of those things. However, the input that we can provide from Maui United Way, as all you all can, is what effect can the environment and climate change have on our clients, on our inner circle. So, when we provide feedback, it's not necessarily just to get funding or have a specific policy, but it's also us as an expert to make sure that we have a voice for the social sector when a council or a community is trying to think about a 30-year plan on infrastructure. Do we need a hospital here? Okay, well, what if this road isn't set here? Do we need better public transportation? How does that affect it? All of those things. So that's what we're working on right now. We do meet with individual council members on a few different things. The other approach that we're working with right now that we're teeing up, so you all are aware, this is to think long-term, is a project. It's a big data project that we're working on with NASA and a few others to map out food security. And how do we tee that up for future policymaking and funding? So it's making sure our new ag director is aware of it. How does it align with the targets that they're looking to do by collecting data and bringing in additional funding? How can we add value to that, but also tee up future funding opportunities for expansion of our partnership with NASA to map invasive species, things like that. So we're continually keeping our representatives in the loop. And I will share that, we have not met with any individuals running for office right now, only our current representatives. So that's something that we really strive for, is that, there is no gray area in this. You cannot walk on one side or the other. It has to be the middle. And I will share that civil discourse is a good thing. We won't always agree, but you do have these conversations that you're going to get a really good solution out that everybody can buy into. It might not always be what you think it is. That's a really long conversation, Deborah. Sorry, I just kept talking. So on the last bit of the conclusion is have your shovel-ready projects available. By shovel-ready, I don't mean like, hey, we're going to build this building. It's, hey, we've got this initiative. It's all laid out. All we need is support, funding, letters of recommendation. Make sure you just are always aware of those in any conversation that you're having. What I have loved and found fascinating here in the state is you're going to run into your reps at the grocery store, at events, hopefully not in public restrooms, because I have seen that happen when people are just like, and I'm like, no, don't do that. You can't do that then. And we can be tactful about it. They expect that in their careers. But have those conversations. Let them know what's going on. Give them the pulse of the community. Hyper locally, they tend to know. Federally, they don't. They're in bubbles. Let them know what's going on. They might be looking at data that's 2 years old. There's value in knowing that, hey, we have a massive housing crisis. Hey, we don't have enough teachers to go around right now. Hey, our police, our CPS, like all of these things, are they actually aware? We are that finger on the pulse. So just, that's the value on top of everything else that we can bring to our representatives is we know what's going on. And sometimes it's best for us to look up and share that message as well. So I will stop sharing my screen. I will, my email's up there. I'll actually put my cell phone in the chat as well, because I am super keen. How do I stop sharing my screen? Because it is, there we go. I'm super keen to make sure that everyone works together and that we're here as a representative and can pull resources together around the state too. So please know that. We've got relationships at all of our United Ways on Hawaii, Oahu, and Kauai, but we also have a broader network of resources that we can share at the national level from United Way worldwide. So if you're looking for policy documents, if you're looking for initiatives, the other ones that we're looking for, employee retention tax credit, earned income tax credit, all of those things. Amber, I will put my email in the chat box as well. Let's not reinvent the wheel. One of the amazing things I love about this community, not just the Aloha and Hawaii and Maui, but our nonprofit sector is, we're not in competition. I don't see us in competition. If you're doing something really good, I'm going to tell our reps about it. I'm going to say, hey, if you want to make an impact in this area, go talk to Amber, go talk to Catherine. That's who's doing the best work. And the more we know that, the better impacts that we can have. And if there's resources that you all need or have questions about, I can tap into a broader network as well. My goal and my position, like I said, is to put ourselves out of business, but it's also to bring resources into our community instead of reshuffling around. So it's, we're a resource. John over on Oahu is a resource. Karen on Big Island, on Hawaiian Island is a resource. We have United Ways that can help spread this word and make those connections as well. So yeah, that's it. Happy to answer any questions or talk story or feedback or really anything. It's I'm here for you all and really appreciate you guys giving me your time today. See, awkward silence. I just don't like it.
Mahalo, Nick. Yeah, again, encouraging anyone, if you have any questions or if you don't feel comfortable unmuting and speaking out, you can put it in the chat. We'll make sure to get your question answered that way. Yeah, or even comments, feel free to put that in the chat as well.
What are some of the policy pushes, and just put them in the chat box that you all are looking at right now, and maybe some of the equity gaps that you all are looking to close? Because I think it might be great to see who's on the call and maybe where some of those alignments might work out just in between you all as well.
I wanted to share something I heard yesterday. I was talking to someone at a state agency who's working on addressing racial and ethnic disparities, particularly the overrepresentation of Native Hawaiians in their particular system. And the person I was speaking with said, I know that there are a lot of people working on this issue within their organization or within their agency, but she wasn't aware of and was encouraging someone to take on, is there any statewide look at that? Like across Department of Health, Department of Human Services, the various divisions within it, those kinds of things. Because she said, we're all gathering our own data, we're all doing our own analysis, we're talking about it, but if we just fix it in our agency, it's not addressing these systemic problems. And she mentioned a couple organizations she thought might be suited to take the lead on it. But I said, hey, can I share your idea with others just in whatever rooms I'm in? I don't want to claim the idea, but wanted to ask about that. And one thing she said was from the data she had looked at, which I haven't seen, is that when they controlled for poverty, there was still huge overrepresentation of Native Hawaiians within various systems, social services, correctional, all kinds of systems. And she just thought, partly because of that, there should be some statewide look at this. So does anyone know what's going on?
Could you repeat what the topic was, Karen? Sorry, I was typing and reading people's comments.
Overrepresentation of Native Hawaiians in various systems, basically on the negative side of things, in child welfare
across the
and
board.
prison.
Oh, yes, got it.
And again, I haven't seen the data, but she said it's not, a lot of people put poverty in that bucket and said if you control for that, there's still this racial ethnic disproportionality. And is there anyone looking at that broadly across the state or any agencies that might be willing to pull everyone together?
Deborah, you're on mute, just a heads up.
We've had some conversations about that with folks, the policy folks at OHA. They're like maybe go ahead, Nick.
I was just, OHA's one. There's an interesting group that's kicking off and looking at federal dollars and taking the lead on Kauai. And I actually have a meeting with them next Tuesday, and I can't even tell you the name of the group because it's just forthcoming. However, it's not just the state of Hawaii, it's looking at the entire Pacific and Pacific Island representation. And there is conversations in that space I guarantee you there's going to be one out here. We just don't know about it as of yet. But as more data, just as an FYI, there's going to be some ALICE numbers post-COVID, asset limited, income constrained yet employed, for those of you not aware, will be coming out in the next month or so, which is off schedule. But the reason being is because of COVID, we need to look at where those equity gaps are. And obviously, you know, our state, our county, 55% is on that paycheck to paycheck working poor, and disproportionately, you know, our Pacific Island communities and Native Hawaiian communities are part of that. I will share, I put our what we do, something for you all to think about as well is what is the ethos of your organization and what equity gaps are you guys looking to close? We did a DE&I statement, diversity, equity, and inclusion statement that was pretty, I call it robust and bold. But when we're looking at the Native Hawaiian community and the equity gaps, you know, I asked the question why 5 times. Okay, well, why is it disproportionately Native Hawaiian? Well, why is that portion of the community earning less? Why is that going back? And the outcomes that we came up with is it's colonization, it's loss of language, it's all of those things. And we put that out there publicly. So I do know conversations are taking place, thankfully, but it's one of the things that it's going to take a huge effort and hopefully a statewide approach in that space. So Karen, I think you were going to lead that. So I did see a couple of conversations just on food and DOE and child care. Great to see those things. Working Family Coalitions, if you're not part of that, please jump on that. You know, if you guys are interested in the free to low cost meal lunches, there's a huge push for that. Hawaii Appleseed is a big push on that. All of our federal reps have pushed to increase that amount. There's conversations taking place about the union and cafeteria workers not being able to work during the summer. There's earmark appropriations asks for Cow for Keiki to continue that delivery program. Income limits for SNAP in Hawaii. The wait time on SNAP in Hawaii. It's a gong show right now. So how do we, you know, within that median income limits? Great. What is the target that the question that I would pose to those looking for policy changes is we can identify the problem. What would the best solution be based on our input? When we have that input, then we can start coming together and creating initiatives and strategy on how best to close those equity gaps. But I'm continue talking again. Systems change. Let's not think about, okay, well, how do we provide meals to this community on this date? No, why do they need meals? Why aren't they able to get that food? Why? Ask that question. That's the one thing that I would try to leave you with. Caleb.
Hi, Nick. Thank you so much for your insightful presentation and all the information. So I'm Caleb. I'm originally from Maui, but I'm here on Oahu, and I do research with UH Manoa. I'm a graduate student, and I guess my question is, you know, a lot of times we, as researchers, want our research to be applied in the community. So how can we be, like, how do we collaborate with organizations, nonprofits, and I guess policies? I know you said like we can reach out via email to like our different representatives, but I feel like as a community psychologist in training, like my goal is to try to see what the community wants. So that's more like talking with stakeholders in the community, like you folks. So yeah, like I think it's hard, especially when we do research and we find these disparities like Karen mentioned about over-representation of Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islanders. Like there's a lot of literature out there like Dr. Kolokula and Dr. Palakiko here at UH Manoa, but how then do we further apply it so we can get funding for these like interventions, or like how do we get a first meeting with you folks? I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, and that's a great question, Caleb. Is how, and I'll throw a question back at you, not to answer, but just to think about how do we ensure that the data that we have is not weaponized as well, just as food for thought to think about. How is that data not used? How do we ensure that data is not used in a negative way as well, and paint a picture that might not be what we're looking to accomplish? So I think if you're looking at data, and working in a specific niche is reach out and say, hey, to anyone. If it's me, in our space that works with a lot of nonprofits, if it's to Karen, working with groups, think about where that data might be useful. I will share that, our target and that we're building is the data that you have is incredibly valuable. How can it be correlated to other things as well in a broader system? So try to think about that. If we're collecting data on drug abuse within a school system, well, how does that correlate to poverty? How does that correlate to ethnic and geographic location? How does that correlate to food costs and rental costs? How does that correlate to all of these different things? So think about it once again as a broader system of how can that data be valuable and what other data can come into this to paint a bigger picture. So what we're doing, and I would love to connect with you on this, Caleb, is our food security dashboard that we're building out. So 211, if you guys aren't familiar with 211, you dial 211. Hopefully you guys all know about it. And that data on who's calling for SNAP, how many people are calling for food assistance, all of that we have feeding into a Amazon Web Services cloud system. That we correlate with NASA data of what food is being grown in our community in real time. That correlated with census tract data, correlated with real-time food cost data. We can start getting a picture of where the food systems gaps are. What other data can we import into that? What other valuable data? ALICE data, data on recidivism, data on diabetes. So there are systems and people working on this that, instead of a pinhole lens of a snapshot of a data set, we're looking at how does that correlate and how does that forecast moving forward as well. So I went off on a tangent there, Caleb. I think it's knowing what data you're looking at and what picture does that paint, who's working in that space and who could potentially work in that space. They will meet with you 100%. For us to know what gaps we have and where there's information, that data is valuable. People are going to want that. I will share, try not to sell it. I know that there's, even United Way Worldwide is trying to monetize 211 data. Publicly available, transparency, not weaponized, use the data really, really carefully.
Thank you, Nick.
I know there was a lot of great conversations in the chat box. And do you think representatives may have an impact regarding how our Hawaii limits are determined? I think they're starting to. So I think they're starting to realize that this equity gap causes a lot of other issues. We have seen SNAP numbers go up, so more people are getting signed up, which was, the initial step. We saw that take place. But I think if they understand what those gaps are within our community, really clearly stated, they're going to make a change. Thing went with USDA allocations for Department of Education. Alaska's doing it this way. Here's all the data that we have. All 4 of our representatives voted to increase it. So the more information that they have, they're going to make an impact. And I think once you see this new ALICE data come out, I would really, really urge you all to use the data in conversations that you're having. Our community, there's 2 things that I look at when I look at, your comments about the 6% median income limits, is the benefits cliff that can take place. If you guys aren't familiar with that, I'm on all of these SNAP, Medicaid, all of these things. And if I get an extra $1 an hour, I'm going to lose all of those. So it's actually a negative loss. So it keeps people within that system. The other thing is that ALICE population tends not to fall within that section of I can get public support. But what happens if they lose one paycheck? They're going to fall in there. So can we provide one bit of support that can keep them from falling in there? And that could be an increase in the SNAP, not increase in the SNAP, more easier access to SNAP. So having those conversations, I 100% think that our representatives would take that to heart and shift that focus, pretty easily. Senator Schatz being on of the Native American, Native Hawaiian committee, huge proponent in that space. And then food security, there was the big conference going on right now with President Biden. I think it just kicked off yesterday, and they're looking to end hunger. And how do we do that? So knowing what the gaps are in our community is valuable information for them. And if our reps know that, they'll get funding here. And get on those mailing lists. Get on the White House mailing lists. It's they'll send you all those meetings. You'll know what their directions are. Mental health, another big push. Department of Health, lots of funding coming in that space. We don't have enough doctors out here. They're on strike. Great conversations to have with your reps if you're in that space too. This has been fun, you guys. I appreciate you all, like I said, taking the time again. And this stuff is fun for me because, like I said, is we can actually make change. And it's not this big, crazy beast out there. It's your neighbors, it's your community, and it's all just people. And they're all looking to do good. Some of them might not be like the brightest. I'll share that too. So don't hold them to be like these ethereal things. Just make it really easy for them to look good. If I can leave you with that, that's the target. Make them look good and make it really easy. And more than likely or not, they're going to end up doing it. Sorry, that's my jaded perspective after so many years. And it's good to see you, Adele. Everyone, really appreciate it. And once again, don't hesitate to reach out. Email, cell phone, that's what's great about this community is, the more we work together, the faster we can close these equity gaps, and I can go do something else and not work in this space anymore.